what's up guys? This is a little bit of a retrospective video looking back at an annual camping trip. This particular year was 2021 and we set out to Nevada and Idaho. We had to skip our trip in 2020, so this was going to be the first time some of us had seen each other in nearly 2 years. The basic plan was that we were going to meet in Jarbridge, Nevada, and from there we were going to follow the Idaho BDR. And let me quickly introduce you to the crew. First up, we have my then girlfriend and now wife, Olivia, who you guys have seen before. And we drove our Quigley 4x4 Ford Econoline E350 van. I'm sure some of you guys are wondering why I got rid of the 4x4 van in favor of a two-wheel drive van. And the reason was that we wanted a clean slate. The van was built by my friend who lived out of it, and it also had a lot of miles, so we really just felt like we wanted a fresh project, something we could make our own, and we honestly didn't find ourselves using the 4x4 in this van as much as we thought we would. And also coming from Southern California, we have Mike Burrows, his girlfriend Emily, and their dog Chloe. They drove Mike's 1997 F350, and it's got the 7.3 Power Stroke in it with a Go Fast Camper rooftop tent. Also coming from California, we have Andrew Sylvia in his FJ62 with his dog Rango, and John Salerno in his Vehicross. Next up, we have my friend Justin Chenoweth, their daughter Emma, his wife Rose, and of course their dog Charlie. Justin may look familiar to some of you. He's the owner and operator of U-Joint Offroad in Colorado. So he's kind of the 4x4 van guy of the group, and he brought his Econoline with the U-Joint kit on it. The next Colorado guy we have is Jean, aka B-Roll Offroad, who has an incredible off-road and overland YouTube channel, which I'll link below, and I think you guys should definitely check it out. He does trail reviews, so you can see trails you want to run and kind of see what the conditions are like. And he brought his Nissan Pathfinder. And last but not least, we have the Pacific Northwest crew consisting of Zach from Washington in his turbo diesel right-hand drive HJ61 Landcruiser. And then we have Mark from Washington, who's also in a right-hand drive turbo diesel HJ80 series Landcruiser. And rounding out the Pacific Northwest crew, we have Gen and Andres in Gen's immaculate HJ60 diesel Landcruiser. And I think Gen's truck is one of my favorites of all time. It has so many cool factory options, and it's just one of the best looking Landcruisers I've ever seen. We had decided that Jarbridge was a good central meeting place for everyone, and it's also where the Idaho BDR starts. We all started to filter in throughout the afternoon and just spent the whole day relaxing in the water, trying to cool off. And we actually spent the first couple of days here exploring the town, its surroundings, and swimming in the river. It was a great way to relax before we really started on the trip, and a common theme you'll see with us is the Red Riders. We love a good BB gun competition at camp. The next day, we hit the road towards our next camp spot, which was a couple 100 miles away across the flat, desolate desert. There wasn't anything but dust and cattle guards, so I didn't film much of anything, as we wanted to just get to camp as quick as possible. We got to the trail sort of late and were losing service, but we were able to give Gene a rough coordinate saying we'll be around here somewhere, because he had to meet us late at night. He was coming in a day late. This ended up being an awesome campsite right next to a creek, and we had a fantastic night by the fire telling stories and laughing. The next morning, we kept driving along the trail, just kind of exploring around, and we ended up doing a hike towards a couple of lakes that we saw on the map. And it was pretty cool because we got to watch a mama moose swimming in the lake with her calf. And a lot of us had never seen a moose in the wild, so definitely an awesome experience for a lot of us. And real quick, I don't like to stop and film too much on the trail just because with this many vehicles, when you stop, people are going to want to let their dogs out, make food, etc. So we just kept trucking through to our next stop. And this was a spot that I had marked on a map before we left. I saw that it was by a river and it looked like it had enough space for all the vehicles. I was hopeful that we would be able to camp there. I wasn't sure if it was going to be a really popular spot or not, but luckily when we got there was no one else around. And the spot was just incredible. I think we all agreed that it was one of, if not the best campsites any of us had ever been to. It was just right up on the river's edge with lots of places to go tubing, cliff jump, and just relax in the water. And like I said before earlier, it had been well over 100 degrees the entire trip, so any water that we could cool off in, we were going to get into. But unfortunately, this is where the trip was going to start taking a turn for the worse. I can't remember exactly why, but I think someone was running out of supplies and we felt like we needed to keep going down the trail and see what else we could find. So we ended up leaving the spot and headed towards town. And, along this trail, there's some incredible hot springs, mines, and just cool stuff to see. So we did a lot of stopping to take photos and just kind of check out our surroundings. After re-upping on supplies in town, we headed back over the mountain pass towards the trails when we heard Zach come over the radio saying his truck was stuck in neutral and wouldn't move. We all turned around, came back, and tried to figure out what was going on with Zach's truck. The transfer case just wouldn't shift into four-wheel drive or two-wheel drive, so while we set up camp and made dinner, Zach and Mike were busy taking apart the transfer case. What they were trying to do was force the selector fork into a drive position because it felt like the selector fork was loose and not shifting. Ultimately, the problem was the internal threads in the drive gear had stripped out, and we didn't figure that out until Zach got home. So in the end, all that work was for nothing. We had called all around Idaho and Utah, hoping we could maybe find a drive gear for it, but there was just no way. So that's where Mike decided that he had to go into town and get a U-Haul because he was going to be towing Zach back to Washington. After that, we'd all decided that, the trip was pretty much over. We needed to head back home. So we got the 62 onto the trailer and started to head towards Washington. But we were hundreds of miles away, so we ended up finding a good camp spot where everybody could just rest and kind of relax before saying goodbye the next day. I didn't think it was possible, but this is actually where the trip got even worse, but for us. Leaving camp, I hit a huge pothole and ended up breaking the trailing arm off of the axle, but I didn't know it at the time. It wasn't until we were on the highway that I noticed that the van was vibrating and shaking. So when we stopped to get gas, I had Mike get out and listen as I drove and hit the brakes and drove and hit the brakes, and that's when he said, "Hey, stop, we have a big problem." We got out and looked, and the trailing arms had broken at the welds where they attached to the axle. And it's pretty much a showstopper. We didn't know what to do because had that axle broken off on the highway, it would have been a very, very big problem. And I'm so lucky and so grateful that that did not happen. And the other lucky thing was that the gas station we stopped at actually had a semi-truck repair shop in the same parking lot. So Mike and I went over there, and after some convincing, they let us weld it back using their welder because they were just too busy and couldn't do it. And I do feel bad. Mike was sick at this point and wasn't feeling good. It was super hot out, and there's just a ton of rust on the axle and the trailing arms, and we're having to grind it and weld through all this. So huge thank you to Mike. I know it wasn't fun. I know he wasn't feeling well, and I'm sure he doesn't even want me to show these welds. They're definitely not pretty, but it didn't matter. We just needed to get on the road and have something safe to get us home. All right, guys, so this is where the video ends, unfortunately. As you could tell, the trip was not going the way we wanted. My van was broken down. Zach's truck was broken down. John and Justin had already left, so morale was pretty low, and we all just kind of decided to go our own way. And Emily and Chloe ended up joining Olivia and I in our van, and we headed south towards Mammoth Lakes, where we have a house that we can stay at. And then Mike had to continue on to Washington to drop Zach off, and then he headed back down to Mammoth, and a few of us spent, a few days down there, and we had a great time, actually. It was a great way to decompress and kind of redeem the trip a little bit. Plus, Olivia and I ended up getting engaged, which obviously was awesome for us. So we had a great time in the end, despite all the challenges throughout the trip. And I know I can't wait to get back to Idaho. That was my first time there, and we didn't really get to see too much of it, but I do plan on going back and doing another video. So again, if you guys can like, comment, and subscribe, it does help me out a lot and just kind of shows support and encourages me to keep making these videos. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.